gosh, look at the crowd.
Come this way.
Those who spread goodness radiate happiness to everyone around them. Introducing LOLC Finance Credit Cards. Fuel the goodness in you.
Welcome to LMDtv. I'm Ashwini Vethakan, and joining us this week on Talking Business is the Precedent Partner of F, Saram Attorneys-in-Law, which celebrated its 180th anniversary, Ayomi Aluwihare. Welcome to the show, Ayomi. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you, Ashwini. It's good to be here.
Ayomi, could you tell us what is sought to be achieved by the Port City Act?
The Board of Investment Legal Framework and the Strategic Development Act Legal Framework set up free trade zones and concession and exemption regime for investment. That is something we know. In terms of the Port City Act, the Colombo Port City Act, what is sought to be set up is a special economic zone. These zones are not new. Special financial zones are not new. In Asia, we have similar zones in Singapore, Hong Kong, and in Tokyo. In the Middle East and North African region, we have Qatar, Dubai, Mauritius. What is sought to be set up is, as I said, a special economic zone where, as set out in the preamble of the law, investment is sought for investors from outside of Sri Lanka. And the law specifically provides that the investment is to be raised in national interest from outside of Sri Lanka. The zone or the special economic zone is primarily to facilitate the diversification of foreign financial services. The existing regimes focus more on industry and manufacturing with some services. Here, the focus is on developing financial services that would be cross-border. So the Port City Act itself identifies some services, which include shipping, logistics services, banking and financial services, corporate headquarter services, where corporate headquarters would be set up here and would be the apex body for a group that would be outside of Sri Lanka. So that is what is sought to be achieved by the Colombo Port City Special Economic Zone.
So who can invest in the Port City?
As I mentioned, the key primary object is to attract foreign investment that is raised from outside of Sri Lanka. And this is thought to be in national interest. So it is primarily foreign investors. However, the provisions in the Port City Act do anticipate or do allow for local investment that can be in the form of the consideration paid for the lease of land. It is anticipated that foreign parties that engage in business in the port city will need land. The land may be leased by local investors, i.e. businesses in Sri Lanka. The Port City Act anticipates also that once land is leased, that these local investors will, together with a foreign investor or a consortium of foreign investors, seek approval from the Commission to carry on business in the port city. So to answer your question, primarily it's foreign investment, but there is provision for local investment by way of the leases, land leases. And of course, local investment will also be required for telecommunication and other utility services and infrastructure within the port city.
Do the general laws of the country apply to the activities in the port city?
Yes, of course. Now, if you look at some of the financial centers, the local laws do not apply. And there are financial centers that apply laws other than their own laws of their country in a financial center. That is not the case in Sri Lanka. The Colombo Port City will continue to be governed by the laws of Sri Lanka. However, the Port City Act makes exceptions or makes inapplicable certain laws. There are 7 laws primarily, and they are found in Schedule 3 of the Port City Act. The Supreme Court, when they recently decided on matters relating to the Port City Act, held that the inapplicability of the laws that have been listed are because provision has been made, or at least this was noted by the Supreme Court, that provision has been made in the Port City Act provisions in relation to matters that are dealt with these laws that don't apply, or those laws are irrelevant. So the laws of the Board of Investment Act, the Strategic Development Act, and some of the local authority laws, the municipality and UDA law. In addition to that, it is in an endeavor to attract investment. The Commission is able to, in terms of the Port City Act, grant certain exemptions from the application of certain provisions of laws, again, that are listed, and to grant incentives. Again, this is not something unusual or particular to the Port City Act. If we look at some of the financial centers, there is provision for the grant of tax benefits. So exemption is possible from the Inland Revenue Act. Exemption is possible from the application of provisions of the Foreign Exchange Act. And there are a number of laws that are listed in Schedule 2 from which an exemption may be sought. Now, it is not every business that will engage in the port city that will be entitled to exemptions or incentives. There is requirement for a business to be identified to be a business of strategic importance. If a business is identified as such because of the benefits it will bring to the national economy, there is possibility for the Commission to grant exemptions. So the general laws of the country will apply, except the laws that are listed in Schedule 3 not to apply. Then certain businesses will be exempt from the application of certain provisions, and this will differ most likely on a case-by-case basis. So all of the laws, such as the anti-money laundering laws, the financing of terrorism laws, and all other laws as we know them, would apply to the area of authority of the port city.
Ayomi, the Supreme Court's judgment determination on the constitutionality of the Port City Bill has been on the news lately. So what are the key aspects of the court's determination?
By and large, the Supreme Court decision dealt with three aspects. The Supreme Court decided that the area of authority of the Colombo Port City is part of the territory of Sri Lanka, and that it had been annexed and forms part of the administrative district of Colombo. It also decided that Parliament has the legislative authority to pass laws in relation to the Port City, and that is the Port City Act. There were in the Port City Bill certain provisions that were held to be inconsistent with the Constitution, and changes were suggested and accepted as if included in the law to make the provisions of the law that were inconsistent consistent with the Constitution. So there were actually there were a number of provisions to which changes are made, and those changes are reflected in now what is the Port City Act.
And on that note, we'll be going in for a short break. Welcome back to the show as we continue our conversation with the President Partner of FJ&G Saram Attorneys-in-Law, Ayomi Aluwihare. Ayomi, a financial center can't survive in isolation. Therefore, the environment in Sri Lanka as a whole would impact the success of the port city as a financial center. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. A financial center can't function in a vacuum, in isolation to the rest of the country. And the confidence and trust of investors, which is a must for the success of the port city, applies to the perception of the investor of the country as a whole. So good governance, independent and impartial regulation, clarity and certainty in policy and implementation of policy, all these are absolutely necessary within the country, within the port city, of course, but also within the country. Also, skilled workforce that is able to adapt and compete with workforces that may come in from other countries into the port city is also necessary. So for the success of the port city, definitely these various aspects that I mentioned must be a focus for the country as a whole, for the country to benefit from the port city and what it is sought to bring into the country or for the country.
How has the legal profession evolved over the past year or so in response to the pandemic?
I think the evolution or the changes that have been made by us in how we work, individual as practitioners as well as the profession, is not too dissimilar to other business. From an advisory point of view, the transition was that we all had to rely on technology to deliver our services in a timely and efficient and seamless manner to our clients. What has been interesting and perhaps a challenge and also an opportunity is with dispute resolution. The Ministry of Justice is in the process of digitizing or bringing steps to digitize the litigation process or the legal process in courts. The pandemic gave an opportunity to practitioners to actually, with court's permission, to use virtual scenarios and technology to ensure that court cases were processed without delay. So, for example, there have been several cases in the district court as well as in the high court where, with the permission and support of court, the proceedings of witnesses have been carried out with witnesses remaining in their own country. So with virtual proceedings, whilst parties are in Sri Lanka and outside of Sri Lanka. So this is something quite innovative, and going forward, it is likely to be a catalyst to the digitization, the completion of the digitization process that the ministry is working on. Similarly, in arbitration, in July last year, we had the first hybrid arbitration with parties in Sri Lanka, the arbitral tribunal partially in Sri Lanka, sitting partially in Singapore, with witnesses from 3 different countries. That was a successful arbitration. Since then, there have been several arbitrations where proceedings have been held virtually to ensure that there is a continued process irrespective of the pandemic. So I think from a dispute resolution point of view, and as I mentioned, the digitization of legal process, it's been positive, and we will only expect that this is only the beginning, and that we will move on to have technology support court infrastructure in a useful manner.
In your opinion, Ayomi, what are the most relevant digital laws companies in Sri Lanka need to stay updated about in the context of supporting digital Sri Lanka?
So on all the topics we've talked about so far, the port city and cross-border financial services, the pandemic and how the profession dealt with the pandemic, technology has played, as you know, and as it has for all business, a very important role. In Sri Lanka, we have a number of laws that have supported and will continue to support business in their digital and technology-driven business. We have, which is very important, the Electronic Transactions Act is an important piece of law. It's based on the UNCITRAL model laws for electronic commerce and electronic signatures, which gives legal recognition to documents that are in electronic form and electronic signatures. This has facilitated even simple steps of raising an invoice in electronic form, something that has legal recognition. We had to advise clients on entering into electronic contracts over this past year, which has again seen a growth based on the Electronic Transaction Act that Sri Lanka has in place. We also have a Computer Crimes Act, which deals with enforcement of unauthorized use of computers and computer programs and data. We have the Payments and Settlement Systems Act, which regulates electronic payments. We have quite a number of laws that brings us, to a large extent, to on par and allows us to carry on business with other countries. One comment I must make is that for our port city endeavor, and for our continued expected reliance on technology, the data protection law, which is still in bill form, and the cyber security law, again, which is in bill form, are 2 pieces of legislation that will require consideration and enactment. It is something that as a practitioner, we are asked frequently as to the protection afforded to data. So I think for the port city and for its financial services, to attract investment into financial services, it becomes important to have these two laws also in place to strengthen our legal framework for the digital Sri Lanka.
Our final question for this evening, Ayomi. What are the global trends and developments local law firms should adopt?
They have largely been technology driven. So as I mentioned, data is important, and in practices, in law firm practices where you're either partially paper free or you're completely paperless, the data of your client is very important and it is necessary to safeguard this data. So technology, data protection technology or data security technology has been an area where there has been quite a significant investment by law firms. And it is very likely that local law firms, if they have not already made those investments, would be making investments as we go on. Also, the service delivery models have changed in law firms outside of Sri Lanka, where work that can be done by a non-legal party or parties are bundled into a product. Work that can be done by a paralegal is another product, and then the legal services as we typically render them is a third product. And these different delivery service models is something that foreign law firms are, for the benefit of their clients, largely cost benefit as well as efficiency benefit of a client, that law firms are putting in place. A further is likely to be the way in which lawyers work. And just as much as business around the world in every area is looking at the work model, law firms also are looking at different hybrid work models that may require their lawyers to come into office or not come into office, or adopt hybrids that are more suited to each law firm. These are, in summary, some of the trends that we have seen. And as I said, some law firms do already. They've started implementing some of these changes, but as time goes on, we expect to see a greater change.
And that's all the time we have for this segment. Thank you for joining us on the show this evening, Ayomi.
Thank you, Ashwini. And thank you, LMD. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Coming up, we have the latest from the manufacturing and exports reports in Sri Lanka. Stay tuned.
You love the feeling of being renewed. To stay beautiful every single day. To breathe just like we do, because you are truly delicate. Protecting the ones who've been with us through the years. With Sayalac Care, the only wood coating that truly protects you. Sayalac Wood Coatings from JAT.
Welcome back to the show, and now let's take a look at the island's exports and manufacturing report. The Purchasing Managers Index compiled by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has identified that the manufacturing and services activity has begun to shrink following the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic that surfaced succeeding the New Year's activities. The central bank stated that the anticipated growth potential in business activities in the 3 months to follow has weakened further in May 2021. This is largely caused by the anxiety and doubt that rose among businesses regarding growth prospects with the intensification of the pandemic. The PMI for manufacturing dropped 2.2 points to 42.1 points in May compared to April 2021, when activity dips due to the traditional New Year holiday. The production, especially in the manufacture of food and beverages and textiles and wearing apparel sectors, declined significantly together with the decline of employment, mainly due to the continued increase in absence without informing, said the central bank. Many respondents further highlighted that their production plans were drastically disrupted by the unavailability of staffing as a result of the travel restrictions imposed in mid-May. The CBSL mentioned that new orders for the manufacturing sector of food had declined in May with the end of seasonal demand and the resurgence of the pandemic. Delivery times further lengthened at a higher pace in May 2021 due to delays in the shipment of imported and local supplies. Respondents further denoted that elevated freight rates affected the cost of importing raw materials and adversely impacted profit margins. Though shipping-related issues were gradually easing, freight rates were still high. The global manufacturing PMI recorded a value of 56.0 in May 2021, with an increase of 0.2 index points from April 2021. The services PMI slipped 39.5 points from 48.9 in April 2021. According to the CBSL, this is the lowest reported since April 2020. New businesses in the services sector declined at a faster pace in May 2021 compared to April 2021, with declines observed in most subsectors, the central bank said. However, human health sector activities have improved with the setup of new COVID-19 treatment facilities. Business activities in human health activities, IT programming consultancy and related activities subsectors remained at the same level as in the previous month. Employment continued to decline in May 2021 due to retirements, resignations and contract expirations amid the absence of new recruitments. And that's all we have for you this week. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.